Hey everyone, how y'all doing? My name is Mateo and I am from Maschine Masters. Today I'm going to do a mix analysis on EQs and to show that not all EQs are created equally. There are a lot of EQs out there and a lot of people ask me what are my EQs of choice, what they should be using, and I also get asked things like how should I EQ this kick? How should I EQ this vocal? The thing is, all EQs are slightly different. And in this age where everything is so visual orientated, we tend to mix a lot with our eyes now. Now, I'm going to show you how making the same adjustments on different EQs do not yield the same results. The way I'm going to do this is I've set up an audio file here of pink noise. Now, some of you may know what pink noise is, and some of you might not. There are two different types of noises that you can use to calibrate hardware and software, one being pink noise, the other one being white noise. Now, pink noise is typically used for calibration. The reason for this is because pink noise is a better representation of how the human ear responds to frequencies, whereas white noise is actually much more accurate. What this means is that with white noise, the energy between every single frequency is distributed equally, whereas with pink noise, the energy between octaves are distributed equally. Because our hearing is not super mechanical and perfect, we can't differentiate between every single frequency. The human ear is able to differentiate a lot better between octaves. So that's why typically for calibration, you use pink noise. So what I've got here is a few tracks set up with different EQs and pink noise on all of them. And we're going to hear and see how each EQ affects the pink noise. And this is kind of a visual representation of how our ears would perceive these adjustments. So on deck today, we have 4 of my most used EQs when I'm mixing. We've got Native Instruments and Softube's passive EQ, which I love. We've got Soundtoy's SiQ, which I love. We've got TDR Nova's EQ, which I also love, and I've done a couple tutorials on it. And we've got my staple EQ for the most part, my SSL channel strip. These are my 4 most used EQs. Now I've gone ahead and set up each of my EQs to attenuate around 700 Hertz. The reason why I chose 700 Hertz is because it's a range that tends to clean up muddiness in tracks. 700 Hertz also is a fixed frequency on my SiQ, and my passive EQ also relies on fixed EQs, and one of the closest frequencies to 700 Hertz was 680. Now, my TDR Nova and my SSL channel strip are variable EQs, which means I can fine-tune them to any frequency that I want. So I've set them to, let's adjust this, closer to 700. And there we go. And over here, I've got mine set to 701. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch between these different EQs on the different pink noise tracks that I have set up. And we're going to hear how, even though they are set to a similar frequency range, they sound different. And on top of that, I've left their cues. So that means their shape of EQ set to default, because this is how you would normally open up the plugin and start fooling around with it. Now you can adjust the cue on some of these plugins, which will also change the sound, but I'm just leaving it at default for now. Now, to assist us in analyzing how each of these EQs are affecting the sound, I've got iZotope's Insight open here, and we're using its spectrum analyzer. And we're going to see, once I activate the pink noise, how the pink noise looks on the spectrum. And then we're going to see, as I activate the different tracks, how that spectrum is going to change ever so slightly. So we're going to use a combination of our hears to hear what the EQs are doing, and a visual cue from Insight. So first, let's start off with the pink noise. Now, Keep in mind, pink noise, if any of you haven't heard it before, it is annoying. So I will try to not have it on that long. Before I hit play, also just remember what the slope of the pink noise looks like on the spectrum. Cool. So we saw that it was kind of like steadily on a decline over there. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go into the various EQs, and we're going to start off with the Psy Q, then to the SSL, then the passive EQ, and then the TDR Nova. So first I'll start off with pink noise and then switch through them. Now, even though they're all set to about 700 hertz, they all sounded slightly different. Now, this is to emphasize the importance of using your ears when you're mixing and not just going off of what you see. This is so important. And this is why some of you might read about tips in a blog about how to clean up something or get a better sound by EQing certain frequencies and then not getting the results you want. So I'm going to just make an observation of the various EQs and how they sound different and what I'm hearing. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to compare the different EQs and just give you my observation of what I'm hearing in regards to the differences between them. So let's start off with the Psy Q, and I'm going to compare it to the SSL. It's interesting. The Psy Q sounded warmer to me, like the high frequencies weren't as emphasized, whereas with the SSL, it sounded like it lost a lot of body in that low end. Even though they're both targeting 700 hertz, they sound drastically different. Now I'm going to go compare the passive EQ to the TDR Nova. You know, it's so interesting between the passive EQ and the TDR Nova. Like, you can really tell that the TDR Nova has a much more narrow Q than the passive does, because the TDR Nova really sounds like it's carving into the specified frequency range. Like, you've got this little tunneling effect, whereas the passive EQ sounds much more broad, where it's just trying to be a lot more general in how it's attenuating that frequency range. So, I mean, these are like just off the bat, like what I'm hearing from these four EQs and how different they are. So I use a lot of these EQs in the same way, but I use them on different things because I know that they have a particular sound. So when I'm attenuating 700 hertz with an SSL, I'm using it on some instruments or vocals compared to when I use the passive EQ in the same frequency range, but on other sound sources, because I know that the way it responds is more complementary and more towards the kind of sound that I want. So I hope that makes sense to you, and I hope that this is kind of a very eye-opening realization for some of you out there. So remember, not all plugins are created equally, which I'm sure you all know, but maybe this gives you a better understanding of how profound the changes actually are, even on things that you wouldn't have expected. Thanks again to all of you that checked out this tutorial. We really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions about what we covered in this tutorial, please feel free to leave it in the comment section below. Also, if you have any suggestions for future tutorials, also leave that in the comment section below. As always, please like and share this video and subscribe to Maschine Masters to keep up with all our latest tutorials. Thank you everyone, have a great day.